I just love a cute bunny craft, and this one does not disappoint. We're going to start out with one of these bunnies from the Dollar Tree, an H and a P from Walmart. And I'm going to take this bunny apart. My inspiration came from the Dollar Tree, and it's this little hop sign, and we're going to recreate it with a more rustic farmhouse look. Now, once we remove all of the pieces from our bunny, I'm going to go ahead and just unwrap the garland from the bunny. And now that we're left with the frame of the bunny, I am going to grab some of my nautical rope from the Dollar Tree. And I ended up using 1.5 of these ropes to completely wrap our bunny. So now all I'm going to do is I kind of stick the rope inside the bunny to get started, and I'm just going to start wrapping it from the bottom. And this first rope is going to go all the way around the bunny and up one of the ears. And when you get to the top of that ear, I just go ahead and I fold that rope under the other rope in there, and I'm using a little bit of hot glue, and I'll just hot glue that into place. And now that that ear is complete, let's go ahead and start wrapping the second ear. For the second ear, I'm going to stuff the rope down into the bunny a little bit, and I'm using this makeup applicator just to kind of push that into the place. And then once I get that to where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping the ear, and we're just going to repeat what we were doing on the first ear. And now that our bunny is wrapped, let's go ahead and set that aside and start working on the letters. So I got these letters at Walmart. I tend to go there often for letters because they always have a good selection of them. And once I have these letters prepped to paint, I'm going to just flip them over, and using my Waverly chalk paint in the color Ballet Slipper, I'm going to paint both sides of these letters. And now that our letters are painted, I'm going back to that little bunny, and I'm going to use a little raffia bow, and I'm taking some hot glue, and I'm just going to put that right at the top between the two ears. Now let's go ahead and put our piece together. I had a piece of molding that I had in my stash, and at one point I had painted it with some chalkboard paint. So I went back and I just went ahead and sanded it down a little bit, and that's the look that I wanted for the base of this. Next, I'm just going to place my letters and my bunny on top of the board and just figure out where I'm going to align everything. And to attach it, I'm going to be using my Type Bond Quick and Thick glue with a little bit of hot glue. And I'll start out by placing the bunny onto the board first. Then I will just center the H and the P around the bunny. And now that everything is glued into place, I let this sit for about an hour before I moved it. It does take a full 24 hours to completely cure. And wow, this piece is stunning. This video does not do it justice. It is adorable. It is such a fun piece for the Easter season. Let me know what you think in the comments below. So you've probably all seen these wood cutouts at the Dollar Tree, and I absolutely love them. They are so versatile and so much fun to recreate. Now for my first step here, I am going to take a placemat, and this is one of the plastic placemats. I got this at the Dollar Tree in the summer or the spring of last year, and I used it for some Christmas decorations, and I had a little bit left over. And all I'm doing is I'm tracing the top part of this carrot on the back side of this placemat. However, the pencil doesn't go all the way in between all of those pieces on the placemat. So this is more of an estimate, and so you'll see what I do here in a few minutes. I am going to actually cut this into 3 small pieces to cover each one of the leaves. So as you can see here, I'm just going to use the top piece of this leaf, and then I'm going to cut smaller pieces out from the placemat. And I'm actually not going to cut them completely perfect. I'm just going to put them over the top of the other 2 leaves. And then I'm going to glue these pieces just right on top of the leaves of the carrot. So I'm taking some Type Bond quick and thick glue, and I'm just going to add a little bit of glue. And using a paintbrush, I'm just going to go ahead and coat the whole entire set of the leaves with the glue. Next, I'm going to add those pieces of the placemat over the top of that glue. And what I should have probably done from the beginning is just started with this step. Now, while that glue is drying, I'm going to go ahead and take some of those scraps from the placemat, and I'm just going to freehand 2 leaves. And if you haven't worked with these plastic placemats from the Dollar Tree, these are actually really easy to work with. It's more of like a foam texture, so it's a lot like working with foam, and they're so easy to cut. Now that our glue has dried, I'm going to go ahead and take my X-Acto knife, and I just flip the carrot over, and I'm just going to trim any excess pieces of the foam right off of the carrot. Next, I'm going to take those 2 leaves that we cut out earlier, and I'm just going to fit them over the top of the other 3 pieces of foam on the carrot. And then I'm just going to trim them so that it looks like there's 5 different branches coming out of that carrot. And once I get those trimmed up, I'll use my quick and thick glue, and we'll go ahead and glue those into place. Now here is what our carrot looks like, and you could just leave it like this, but we're going to take it to another level. Next, we're going to grab my Waverly chalk paint in the color white, and I'm going to paint the carrot with the white colored paint. Now, once the paint has completely dried, I am going to go ahead and grab my Mod Podge, and this time I'm going to use the glossy Mod Podge for this. And we're just going to paint a nice coat all over the bottom piece of this carrot. Now, while this is drying, I'm going to go ahead and prep my napkin. And this napkin I found at the Dollar Tree. I think it was in like a pack of like 10 or 20. It wasn't a lot of napkins in there, but it was over in the party section, and I was really surprised to see this type of a napkin at Dollar Tree. And I'm going to take a little piece of painter's tape, and I'm just going to remove the back layer of this napkin. Now on this napkin, the top corner quadrant was foiled, but the other 3 quadrants were not. And I really like that foil look. So we're going to cut that quadrant out, and we're going to use that for our carrot. So all we do here is we lay that piece of napkin over the top of the carrot, and I just kind of position it so that the swirls go the way that I would like. And once I have it into the place that I want, I put a piece of parchment paper over the top, press down lightly, and then I'm going to grab my heat press, and I'm just going to iron this down onto the carrot. And this heat press will just reactivate that Mod Podge so everything stays into place and there will be no wrinkles. Next, we just go ahead and remove that piece of parchment paper, and I'm going to take that same Mod Podge we used earlier, and we're going to do a nice top coat over the top of the carrot. So once that Mod Podge has completely dried, I'm going to grab my zip sander, or a sanding block would be just fine, and I'm going to sand in a downward motion to remove any excess napkin. Now we could stop right here, but I wanted to add a gold bow. I had this ribbon left over from Christmas, and I think I got this on clearance at Walmart. And I'm just going to make a basic bow, and then I'm going to hot glue that right underneath the carrot stem. Now, I was thinking this carrot could be used in so many different ways. One of the things that I thought would be a great decor piece on a shelf sitter. But I also thought this could be something fun as a prize for finding the most eggs during an egg hunt, or you could actually hide the gold carrot for them to find during the egg hunt. Let me know what you guys think you would do with this gold carrot in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this content, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps my channel grow. Thank you. Let's take this classic bunny from the Dollar Tree and transform him. My inspiration was this Dollar Tree sign. I'm going to start out by taking my Waverly Antique wax, and I'm going to stain both the front and the back side of this bunny. So now that your bunny is stained on both sides, I went ahead and I took that Waverly Antique wax, and I'm just going to brush that around the outside perimeter of this bunny. And now here's what our bunny looks like on all sides. So I've had this cute little stamp set in my stash for quite some time, and I wanted to use it on this project. To apply the stamps, I'm going to be using Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. And all I'm going to do is take my paintbrush, and I'm just going to paint each of the stamps here. At first, I was going to use the little one and the big one, and then I decided once I started doing the bunny that I was only going to use the big stamp. And when I was applying the stamp, I started at the bottom of the bunny and I went in a row, and I'm just going to continue doing that until I cover the whole entire bunny. And I ended up reapplying the paint for every 2 times that I did the stamp. And don't worry if you're stamping and you get it thicker and thinner in other spots on the bunny. That is totally fine. It's going to give it a really rustic look. And once you're done stamping your bunny, you're going to set this aside to dry, and you want this really nice and dry before our next step. So now we're going to take a little piece of sandpaper, and we're just going to buff over the top of the stamped area. Now let's make an embellishment for our little bunny. I'm going to start out with a sheer ribbon, a 1-inch ribbon, and I'm going to hold it together and make a little bow. And once I've got the shape of a single bow, I'm going to add a second loop on each side. Now I'm going to scrunch that together in the center. And using my little pipe cleaner here, I'm going to twist that around the center of the bow. And once you have that nice and tight into place, I cut off any of the excess pipe cleaner. Next, we'll go ahead and just fluff our bow, and then I cut our tails. Next, I'm going to go ahead and cut about a 1.5-inch piece of the ribbon, and I'm going to fold it into thirds. And once I have that folded into thirds, I'm going to wrap that around the center of my ribbon, and I'm going to cover that pipe cleaner. And using a little bit of hot glue, I'm going to put the hot glue on the back and pinch that ribbon together. Be really careful if you are sensitive to the heat. Now, once you have that in place, I'll just trim any of the excess ribbon on the back, and we'll have a beautiful little bow for our bunny. Now let's go ahead and take that bow and hot glue it onto our bunny. And wow, this bunny turns out fabulous. I just love how he turns out. I can't wait to display him for Easter. While browsing the Dollar Tree, I ran across this adorable sign, "Welcome to our patch," but I thought I could make this look a lot nicer. So I grabbed a few items from the Dollar Tree, and one of the items I grabbed was this package of carrots, and they were on stakes, but I'm just going to remove the stakes from these carrots. Now, to elevate the look of these carrots, I'm going to remove the grass on the top of the carrots. Now, once we have all of that removed, I grabbed some greenery here, and this was some stems that I had gotten from Walmart. And I'm just going to remove a few of the little branches off of this to put in the top of each of these carrots. And to do this, I grab my hot glue gun and I just fill the top of the carrot. Next, we'll just add our little stems to the very top to give this a beautiful little hat. And once we have all 3 of our carrots transformed, we'll go ahead and set those aside and start on our next step. So I had some of these wood coasters in my stash, and we're going to use them for this project. And they are a 4x4 coaster. I also had this stencil that I've had in my stash for quite some time. It's a fall stencil, but I've used it for the spring and other seasons. It's just very versatile. So I'll put a link for that down in my description box below. I did get that on Amazon. It's very affordable. Next, I'm going to measure halfway down on this coaster, and I'm just going to score it using a razor blade. And once you do that a few times, it just snaps off with no problem. Now I grabbed a sanding block and just sanded off any rough edges from this piece of wood. And once you're satisfied with the edges, I'm grabbing my Waverly Antique Wax and I'm going to stain both sides of this piece of wood. Now, once that has completely dried, I'm going back to that stencil. And we're just going to use the bottom portion of the stencil that says, "Welcome to our patch." Now, if you don't have a stencil like this, you could print something out with your Cricut or any sort of cutting machine that you may have. You can freehand this and draw this on. You could also use stickers from the Dollar Tree. They have a lot of fun letters and sayings. So you could do a lot of varieties of things. And so the paste that I'm going to be using for this stencil is called Redesign Chalk Paste, and I did get this on Amazon. The color is Vintage Lace. And I'm just taking a squeegee and I'm just going to squeegee that over the top of the stencil, only where the letters are. And once I have that all smoothed out, I'm going to remove this stencil and it looks amazing. Now, once that has completely dried, I grabbed my miter shears. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just trim little triangles out of the side of the sign on each side to give it that ragged, broken look. They don't have to be perfect. Just be really careful when you're cutting these and make just little triangles. And this way, by doing it after the stencil is already on there, you can make sure that the triangles fit nicely around where the stencil is at. Now here's what our sign looks like. I just love how this is turning out. Next, let's go ahead and seal everything in. So I'm grabbing my Jolene's finishing wax here and using a lint-free cloth, I'm just going to wipe that over the top of the chalk paste to make sure everything stays into place. Now, while that is drying, I grabbed a piece of scrap fabric, and I do believe I got this at Dollar Tree at one point. And I'm just going to cut a small slit and tear a piece of the fabric off. We'll make just a basic bow with that piece of fabric. And now we have our 3 components for our sign, our carrots, our welcome sign, and bow. And for our backing, we are going to be using this fun rounder that I have from the Dollar Tree. Next, we're going to take some hot glue, and I'm just going to hot glue these carrots onto the rounder. And I'm starting with the outside carrots first. So I'll do one, and I'm going to center that right underneath the circle there where the hanger is. And then I'm going to do a second one and do the same thing where I'm going to center it underneath that circle. And once I have those 2 in place, I'll put the last carrot right in the center. Next, let's go ahead and grab that welcome sign, and I'm going to just hot glue that right on top of the carrots. And for the final touch, I'll add that little bow to the top of the center carrot. And I am so happy with how this sign turned out. This welcome to our patch sign is such a fun spring piece to put in your decor items. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this content, please hit that like or subscribe button below. It really helps my channel grow. Thank you. So one of my favorite things to do is to decoupage, and I found this beautiful napkin on Amazon, and I got this big box of eggs on Amazon as well. So I'm going to take this napkin and we're just going to go ahead and unfold it and remove the back layer of the napkin. For this next step, I just grabbed my scissors and I'm going to cut out some of these flowers that are in the napkin. And I want to make sure that there are a whole bunch of different shapes and sizes so that it'll be easier to fill the egg. Grab my matte Mod Podge and I'm going to just paint a small section of the egg, and I'm going to lay out some of these napkins over the top of that piece. I do use my Mod Podge and just kind of paint that back down into place. And I don't want to do a whole bunch on this egg to start. I just want to do enough on one side to where I can set this aside to dry, and I'll start on another egg while I'm doing this. Now, once the Mod Podge is dried on the one side of the egg, I can go ahead and come back around and finish the other side of the egg. It does take about 20 minutes for each egg to dry on each side, so that's why I kind of do these in batches. It's kind of fun to do 3 or 4 or 5 of them of the same type or different types of napkins. These eggs that I got on Amazon, they do have a small hole on the bottom of the egg, so you can add a skewer to the bottom if that makes it easier for you to put your Mod Podge on and do your decoupaging that way as well. So if you're like me, you probably have a stash of napkins that you've used for crafting if you're a decoupager. So you can use any of your napkins that you have in your stash. If they have small little pieces on them, these work great for adding to your eggs. So I have these ones that had some fun butterflies and flowers, so we use those as well. And here is our finished product. I love how these eggs turned out. Aren't they so cute? The Dollar Tree always has some fun new things in the spring, and this is one of them, one of these beautiful wood trays. So let's jump right in with this beautiful stencil that I have from Amazon, and I got this in like a 9-pack. These are really small stencils, and I wanted to use the words grown locally. So I'm going to center that along the bottom of this tray, and then I'm taking some painter's tape and I'm just going to cover up the carrots because I don't want to accidentally paint those carrots onto the tray. Now the chalk paste I'm going to be using is redesigned chalk paste, and the color is vintage lace. I'm just going to squeegee that over the top of our stencil, and then once that is all done, we'll go ahead and remove the stencil, which is the best part. And now let's just set that aside to dry. While that is drying, I grabbed one of these carrot cutouts and a napkin. And I'm going to take some Mod Podge here, and this Mod Podge is matte finish, and we're just going to brush the Mod Podge over the top of our carrot. And once I have a nice layer of Mod Podge, I'm just going to set this aside to dry. Now going back to our napkin, I found this napkin at Home Goods in the fall, and I really loved just that print on it, and it reminded me of carrots. So I am going to go ahead and prep this napkin. And to do that, I'm just taking a little piece of painter's tape, and I am going to remove the back 2 layers of the napkin. And since we're using a smaller carrot here, I don't need this whole napkin, so I'm just going to trim the napkin a little bit to make it a little easier to work with. Now I just go ahead and I lay that napkin over the top of our carrot. And then I'm taking a piece of parchment paper. We'll lay that right over the top of the napkin. And using a hot iron, I'm just going to iron that napkin right onto where we painted that Mod Podge. Next, I grab my zip sander and I'm going to sand in a downward motion to remove any of that excess napkin. Now we'll grab our Mod Podge again, and I'm going to paint a coat over the top of the napkin to seal everything in. Now I wanted to add some greenery to this, and so I grabbed one of my picks, and I believe this is a berry pick that I got from Walmart, and I'm just going to take some of the green leaves off of it. And next I grab my Waverly Antique Wax, and I'm going to just stain the top of my carrot. But because I got a little of that Mod Podge on there, you can see that that stain did not want to take where the Mod Podge was. So I decided to grab some green paint instead, and I went ahead and I just painted over the top of that, just in case anything wanted to show through when I put those greenery pieces on. Now, to attach these greenery pieces onto my carrot, I did have to trim them pretty close to the leaves because I didn't want any extra stem there. And then what I ended up doing was adding the hot glue to the wood piece, the carrot top, and then I'm just going to set those pieces of greenery right on top of that hot glue. Now, doing it this way is great, except for you need to make sure you go really quick because that hot glue dries quickly on that cold surface. So I was going as quick as I could to make sure everything stuck into place. And for our final addition, I'm just going to add a quick twine bow to the top of our carrot. Going back to our wood tray, I needed to find a way to hang this piece. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this over, and I'm just going to hand screw in a little sawtooth hook. And now that we have a way to hang our piece, I'm going to flip this back over and we're going to add our carrot to our tray. And I'm just going to use my Titebond glue with a little bit of hot glue to attach. And now our beautifully locally grown carrot is ready to display. I just love how this turns out. It has such a nice, fun farmhouse feel, but can transition from Easter into the whole entire summer for decor. And for those gardeners out there, this is a great decor piece as well. Carrots are one of my favorite things to grow in my garden. Do you guys grow carrots in your garden? Let me know by dropping a carrot down below. I get a lot of comments from you guys about my decoupage, and so for this little craft here, I am going to decoupage a pickle jar. And what we're going to do is we're going to start out by taking some white Waverly chalk paint and paint a nice coat of paint around the whole entire jar. And while the jar is drying, I'm going to grab some Waverly chalk paint in the color Elephant, and I'm going to take that paint and paint the lid of the jar. While we have that elephant color paint out, I'm going to grab this cute little styrofoam bunny rabbit that I got from the Dollar Tree last year, and I'm just putting that onto a skewer, and we're going to paint the bunny rabbit the same color. What I love about putting this on a skewer is I can just stick that skewer into a cup and it can just be set aside to dry. On to the decoupage. This napkin is from Home Goods, and we're just removing the back 2 layers. Once we have done that, we're going to prep our jar. To prep our jar, I'm going to place it on top of an egg carton. And what I'm doing by doing that is it's giving me an extra set of hands. Next, I grabbed my Mod Podge, and I did not get this on camera, but I painted a coat of the Mod Podge over the top of the paint on the areas that you can see when you're looking down at the egg carton. I'm going to use cling wrap for this next step as well. So we're going to take our napkin and layer that right on top of that Mod Podge. For your next layer, you're going to use some cling wrap over the top of the napkin. Then you're going to take your hands and just smooth the cling wrap around the jar. And this will take a minute, but once you're done, we'll peel that cling wrap away and the Mod Podge will just be set there to dry for about a half an hour. So a half an hour went by, and I wanted to make sure everything was really dry before I flipped this jar over. So I did use my heat tool just to ensure that everything was nice and dry. And once we have our jar flipped over on the egg carton, I'm going to just make sure that everything fits fine with the napkin, which it does. And now I will grab my Mod Podge, and I'm going to paint a nice coat of Mod Podge over the top of all of that white paint. And very carefully, we're going to pull up the napkin and cover the whole entire jar. Next, you guessed it, we're going to grab that cling wrap again, and we're going to place a layer of that cling wrap over the top and smooth out that napkin over the Mod Podge on the jar. once everything is dry, I'm going to go ahead and take some scissors and cut any of the extra napkin off of our jar. To seal this jar, we're going to use another layer of Mod Podge. So you'll see me here just painting a coat of Mod Podge around the whole entire jar. Now let's put this jar together. I'm going to take my cute little bunny and hot glue that to the lid. Let's add the lid to our jar, and our piece is complete. This is a perfect little jar to stash some change into, use as a decor piece. I've been using it as a decor piece with some wrapped candy inside. So I've been wanting to try out using one of these wooden wreaths from the Dollar Tree. And for this craft, we're going to start with one of those wood wreaths and some of our favorite ribbons and zip ties. Next, I'm going to measure out my ribbon, and I'm starting out by measuring them out into 8-inch pieces. And we're going to need 12 pieces of ribbon in each one of these colors. And once we have our ribbon cut out, I go back and dovetail each one of these pieces of ribbon. And now that we have our ribbon all prepped, we're going to go ahead and start putting together our wreath. I start by stacking our ribbon in an X shape until I have 3 pieces of ribbon all nice and stacked up. Next, I'm going to cinch that ribbon right in the center of that X, and using my zip tie, I'm going to go ahead and attach that to our wreath. And before I tighten the zip tie all the way, I flip the wreath form over and just fluff my bow and make sure it's even the way I would like, and then I finish tightening up that zip tie. Next, I just go ahead and trim the extra piece of the zip tie right off. And now we repeat this step again, adding another ribbon at 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and then again at 9 o'clock. That way they're evenly spread out before we put the next set of ribbons on. And for our remaining 8 sets of ribbons, we're going to put 2 ribbons between each one of these ribbons that are already on our wreath form. And once all of your ribbons are attached, I just flip the wreath form over and fluff everything out to make sure everything looks nice and full. Next, we're going to add some embellishments to our wreath. I found this adorable carrot patch sign at the Dollar Tree and absolutely fell in love with it. So what I'm going to do here is just hot glue that right to the center of our wreath. You're putting the hot glue right onto those zip ties to make it a little bit easier to center this into the wreath. While the hot glue is setting, I just used my pink clips to hold everything in place. Now, I didn't want my zip ties to show on my craft, so what I'm doing here is taking some half beads and I'm hot gluing them to the center of each of the bows that still show after I've added the sign to this wreath. Now, this carrot sign from the Dollar Tree is beautiful on its own, but to give it a little bit more dimension, I am going to add a bow right to the center of this sign on top of the bow that's on the sign itself. So it gives it this like pop in the center of the sign. And now this amazing wreath is ready to hang on your door for the spring season. I love how this turns out. For our next craft today, we're going to make a bunny wreath. I'm using a wreath form that I got from the Dollar Tree and this fun chunky yarn that I got at Walmart. So to start this bunny out, I'm going to go ahead and wrap the yarn around the ears of the bunny, and then I'm going to continue wrapping down the circle portion of this bunny wreath. So we're going to fill that whole circle portion in with the chunky yarn. And to ensure that the chunky yarn stays in place, I'm using hot glue every other wrap or so, just to make sure everything stays in place. So now that we have the bottom half of our bunny completely wrapped, let's start wrapping the ear. I start by just tying a quick little knot at the bottom piece of the ear, and then I hot glue that knot into the circle piece of the bunny. And now we just wrap the yarn around the ears. And I'm just going to wrap the outside piece of the ears, and I'm not going to fill in the center for these. And when we get to the end of the second ear, I'm just going to cut the yarn and then stick the yarn into the center piece of this bunny and hot glue it into place. So now let's add a little simple bow to our bunny. If you'd like to learn how to make this bow, I'll link a video above here that you can check out to make this bow. And that's it. I just hot glue the bow into place and our adorable bunny is ready to display. This is a great neutral piece for the spring. This next craft is a two-part craft. We're starting out by painting some adorable eggs that we're going to put inside a decoupage basket. These plastic eggs I did get at the Dollar Tree. And what I like about these eggs is that there's a hole on the bottom of these eggs that allow for you to put a skewer inside of them. And as you can see, these skewers are well used. I just keep reusing them in my craft room. For my first layer of paint, I'm using the Waverly chalk paint in the color Sandstone. And I'm doing a nice coat of paint over all of the eggs. And I ended up doing 2 coats of the Sandstone just to make sure that the gold color was covered. And once the eggs are completely dry, I'm taking some of my Waverly chalk paint, and this time I'm using the color Ballet Slipper, and it's a pink color, and we're just going to dry brush that over the top of the egg. And I just wanted to say a quick thank you to everyone that has subscribed. I really appreciate it. I would not be able to do this without you guys, so thank you so much. And if you're enjoying this content, if you could hit that subscribe button below, I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So once the pink paint has dried, I'm going to go ahead and dry brush another layer over the top of that. And this time I'm using the color Plaster from Waverly Chalk. Now let's go ahead and set these eggs aside to dry. And while those are drying, let's get started on our basket. So this spring, Dollar Tree has come out with a lot more wood boxes in their Crafter Square section. And this is one of those boxes. Now, I gloved up for this because this can get a little bit messy, but I'm using my Waverly wax in the color Antique Wax, and I'm just taking a baby wipe and I'm staining the whole entire box, inside and out. And once everything has dried, I take my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster, and I'm just going to dry brush this with a round brush. Now, once I'm done dry brushing this, I'll set this aside to dry. Let's grab out our napkin. I found this napkin at Home Goods during the Valentine's Day season, and I just love that the flowers in this were so full of spring. I'm going to use this in this piece. We're using a small wood bunny from the Dollar Tree, and I previously painted it in the color Plaster that I did not show on camera. And after the paint has dried, I took some of my Mod Podge in matte, and I'm just going to go ahead and do a nice coat over the top of my bunny. Now grab your napkin. Once we have the top layer of the napkin positioned on the bunny the way we would like, I grabbed a piece of parchment paper, and you could grab an iron or a heat press and just iron that napkin right on top of the bunny and the Mod Podge. Using the hot iron, you're reactivating the Mod Podge so it allows the napkin to adhere nicely to your bunny. Now I take my zip sander and I'm just going to sand down in a downward motion around the outside edge of my bunny. If you don't have a zip sander, a sanding block or some sandpaper will work just fine. Now using some wood glue, I'm going to glue the bunny onto our wood box. And once our bunny is completely attached to our box, I'm taking some Spanish moss and I'm filling the box up. Now let's grab the eggs that we painted earlier and add them to our box. And now this project is complete. I think this turned out adorable. Let me know what you think in the comments below. So this is a fun, easy craft that you can do while watching TV or hanging out with the kids. All you need is some twine and 5 different size wood beads that kind of go from bigger to smaller. And the first thing I'm going to do with these beads is I'm going to put them in a plastic freezer bag. And I like the freezer bags because they're a little bit thicker, and with pouring some paint and water in there, I don't want any leaks. And then we just seal the bag and we're just going to mush around these beads. And this is just going to lightly color our beads, and there will be a nice light off-white color. Now once we're done coloring our beads, I'm going to put on some gloves and just carefully remove the beads, and I'm just placing them on a paper towel to dry. And once those beads have dried, I grabbed some gray color twine, and I got this twine from the Dollar Tree. They get it from time to time in their Crafter Square section. Now the fun part, we're going to arrange the beads in a little line going from largest to smallest, and this is going to be how we're going to set up our cute little carrots. And oh my gosh, these are just so adorable. You guys are gonna love them. So I'm just going to string these from smallest to largest onto my twine. And I started out by just stringing the whole entire set of beads, but you could string them up individually if you liked. I just found it was easier to just do a big long stretch for me. And once I got that done, I just separated them out into little carrot pieces. We got our little beads all strung up into little carrot pieces. I'm going to take a little bit more of my twine, and I used 5 pieces of twine, and I'm going to just tie them around the knot that I tied at the top of this little carrot. And we're just going to continue doing that till all the strings are attached. To unravel those strings, so all I'm doing here is I'm taking a basic comb, and I'm just going to comb all the way through those pieces of twine until it looks like a little carrot top. If needed, just go ahead and give your carrot a little haircut on top. And once that is complete, I'm going to take some black and white ribbon, and I'm just going to add a little bow to the top of our carrots. So as an alternate method to making these carrots, you can take some boxwood or some greenery, and this boxwood I did get at Walmart, and I'm just going to trim the excess string off the top of these carrots. Now let's trim up our little piece of boxwood and fit that into the top piece of the carrot. And once you know that the greenery is gonna fit, I put a dab of hot glue inside the top piece of the bead and then insert the greenery so it has a good secure place to be. And now for the finishing touch. We just add a little gingham bow to the top of our carrot. Carrots are ready to display. What color would you make your carrots? Let me know in the comments below.